Let me ask you something. Why does everything feel harder than it used to? You wake up tired, not just physically, but mentally. You try to focus, but your mind feels heavy. Even simple tasks feel exhausting. And the worst part, you can't explain why from the outside, your life looks fine. But inside, it feels like you're constantly behind. You try to be productive. You watch videos, you read advice, wake up earlier, be more disciplined, try harder. So you try, and you try again. But no matter what you do, it feels like you're pushing against an invisible wall. Slowly, a dangerous thought appears. Maybe something is wrong with me. This is the part nobody talks about. When things feel hard for too long, you don't just get tired. You start losing confidence. You stop trusting yourself. You lower your expectations, not because you don't care, but because you're exhausted from trying. And here's where the pain gets quieter and deeper. You don't just feel tired. You feel guilty for being tired. You rest, but you don't enjoy it. You stop, but your mind keeps racing. Even when you're doing nothing, you feel like you should be doing more. So rest turns into stress, and doing nothing feels like failure. Here's the truth most people never hear. Life didn't suddenly become harder. Your brain is overloaded. You're trying to live a modern life with a nervous system that was never designed for it. Endless information, constant comparison, non-stop decisions. Your brain is tired, not broken. And this is where most people finally stop blaming themselves. Because up until now, you've been trying to understand this feeling from the outside, from habits, from productivity, from motivation. But the truth lives somewhere else. It lives in everything you've been carrying quietly. Things you never sat down and chose to carry. Things that slowly became yours without permission. Pressure to keep up. Pressure to be consistent. Pressure to not fall behind. You didn't agree to this weight. You adapted to it, and adaptation is powerful. It allows humans to survive almost anything. But adaptation has a shadow. When you adapt for too long, you forget what life felt like before the pressure, before everything needed a reason, before rest needed to be earned, before calm felt suspicious. You stopped checking in with yourself. Not because you didn't care, but because caring took too much energy. So you learned to ignore the signals, the tight chest, the shallow breathing, the constant background tension. You normalized them. You told yourself, this is just adulthood. This is just life. But it's not life. It's load, and load doesn't arrive all at once. It builds, moment by moment, expectation by expectation. Unfinished emotion by unfinished emotion. It grows when you stay quiet. Instead of saying what hurts, when you say yes, while your body is already tired. When you keep moving because stopping feels dangerous. Load grows when you become the strong one, the reliable one, the one who handles things, because strong people are rarely asked how they are. And reliable people are rarely given permission to fall apart. So you carry more, not because you want to, but because you learned that letting go might disappoint someone. And over time, your system stops asking what you need. It only asks what's required next. That's how survival slowly replaces living. Not dramatically, not obviously, quietly, until one day, even rest doesn't feel restful. Even success feels empty. Even free time feels uncomfortable. And that's confusing because on the outside, nothing is wrong. But inside, everything feels tight, heavy, crowded. That's when load becomes invisible. And invisible load is the hardest kind to explain. And load accumulates quietly, gradually, until one day everything feels heavy. And you don't know why. That's the moment. Most people turn against themselves. They look for flaws. They look for discipline. They look for motivation. But the system isn't failing. It's responding. Responding to years of staying alert, responding to never fully resting, responding to always preparing for what's next. Your nervous system learned that safety depends on performance. So it stays active, even when nothing is happening, even when you're sitting still, even when you're supposed to relax. That's why your body feels tense for no clear reason. That's why silence feels uncomfortable. That's why doing nothing creates anxiety instead of peace, because stillness feels unfamiliar, and unfamiliar feels unsafe. To a system trained for survival, this isn't a mindset issue. This is a nervous system pattern, and patterns don't change through self-criticism. They change through safety. Safety is what allows the system to stand down, to stop scanning, to stop bracing, to stop preparing for impact. And here's the part that most people miss. You don't create safety by doing everything right. You create safety by allowing yourself to do less without punishment, without mental consequences, without self-attack, without turning rest into another task. That's when the system starts listening. That's when tension softens. That's when breathing deepens without effort. And slowly, very slowly, energy begins to return. Not because you forced it, but because you stopped draining it. This is the kind of energy that doesn't spike and crash. The kind that doesn't need urgency. The kind that feels steady. The kind that allows you to move forward without pushing yourself from behind. This is what people mean when they say things start to feel lighter. Not easier, just lighter. And lighter is where clarity begins. Lighter is where motivation quietly returns. Lighter is where you finally feel like yourself again. Not a better version, not a more productive version, just you. And that is where real change starts. And here's something important to understand. Lightness doesn't mean everything is fixed. It means your system finally feels safe enough to stop holding its breath, safe enough to pause without panic, safe enough to move without forcing, safe enough to listen instead of react. That's why the change feels subtle at first. No fireworks, no sudden transformation, just a quiet sense that you don't have to rush anymore. And that quiet is not weakness, it's recovery. And recovery begins the moment you stop rushing yourself. If everything feels hard, it doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're carrying too much without realizing it. The problem isn't motivation. The problem is mental weight. And this is why most motivation advice doesn't work for you, because it assumes you're empty. But you're not empty. You're full of information, full of pressure, full of unfinished thoughts. You don't need more fire. You need less noise. So let's be clear about one thing. This isn't about quitting, and it's not about lowering your standards forever. It's about stopping the internal fight. Because when you stop fighting yourself, your energy stops leaking. And when energy stops leaking, progress becomes possible again. You don't fix this by pushing harder. You fix it by removing weight, fewer decisions, fewer inputs, fewer expectations. Progress doesn't come from doing more. It comes from doing less on purpose. Here's one small shift that changes everything. Lower the starting point. Don't ask, how do I fix my life? Ask, what is the smallest thing I can do today? Without resistance, momentum comes after action, not before. When pressure goes down, clarity goes up. When clarity rises, action becomes easier. And when action feels easier, you stop fighting yourself. That's when life starts to feel lighter again. And this isn't just about today. Once you understand this, you stop blaming yourself. Every time life feels heavy, you stop panicking. When motivation disappears, you stop forcing productivity. When your system needs care, and that changes how you move through life, not just how you get things done. If this video felt personal, that's because you're not broken, you're overloaded. And this channel exists to help you understand yourself, not judge yourself. If you want more clarity, more calm, and fewer invisible battles in your head, subscribe. And tell me in the comments what feels heavy for you right now.